So how does a philosopher become a philosopher? You might picture someone in a quiet library, surrounded by dusty old books. But for others, it all starts with an experience. Something so strange, so out there, it just completely shatters their view of reality. Today, we're diving into the story of one of those philosophers, a guy whose entire way of thinking was forged by two encounters he could never, ever forget.
We're going to start with this quote from the man himself, Erkin Turan. It's kind of cryptic, right? The mind doesn't think if you don't know how to stop. What he's getting at is that real thinking isn't just noise and chatter in your head. It's about having the ability to pause, to really look, and to wonder. And for him, the biggest reason he ever had to stop and think came from way up in the sky.
And this really is the heart of his story. His journey from being a little kid in a super remote village to a philosopher questioning, everything. It didn't start in a classroom. It was sparked by two very personal and totally unexplainable events. Okay, let's get into it. We have to go back in time a bit to the mid-1980s. Picture a small, isolated Kurdish village in the Kars province of Turkey. This is where our philosopher was just a boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and he saw something that would change his life. He actually describes two totally different sightings. The first one, it sounds almost like something from a movie, doesn't it? A classic disc, flashing lights, the whole deal, and it apparently landed on the ground. But the second sighting, that one was way, way weirder. He calls it a cloud-mist mixture. It was this silent, slow-moving sphere that didn't look mechanical at all. It passed so close to his family's little one-story house that they all ran inside, terrified, just watching this thing drift by as if it were looking right at them. Now, here's what makes this whole story so fascinating. You have to understand the context. When we hear stuff like this today, our brains immediately go to movies, TV, the internet. But think about it. Where would a 5-year-old kid in a village in the middle of nowhere, Turkey in the 1980s even get these ideas from?
It's the most obvious question, right? It's the first thing you'd ask. Was he just playing back something he'd seen somewhere? Was this a memory from a movie? Well, the answer to that is what makes his testimony so powerful.
According to Turan, his village was completely cut off. No television, no movie theater, no newspapers or magazines ever made it out there. He says the only book he ever even saw was the Quran. The idea of a UFO or a flying saucer, it just wasn't a thing in his world. So he argues his experience was totally raw. It was unfiltered.
So you have to wonder, what does an experience like that, with no filter, no preconceived ideas, do to a young mind? It doesn't just become a fun story you tell at parties. No, it becomes the bedrock for a whole lifetime of asking why. And this is the question that really pivots the whole thing. This is where it goes from being a story about a strange sighting to an actual philosophical origin story. What does your brain do with something that doesn't fit into any box you have? For him, the impact was huge and immediate. Suddenly, the world wasn't this fixed, solid thing he thought it was. That line between what is and what could be just got completely blurred. Reality itself became this living, breathing question for him, not just a bunch of facts someone hands you. A door opened in his mind and it never, ever shut. And this quote just nails his whole point. He says, look, lots of people see weird things, but they eventually just shrug it off. They get on with their lives. But for him, seeing the thing wasn't the main event. It was just the starting gun. It was the fact that he dedicated his entire life to seriously thinking about it. That's what he says made him a philosopher. So after decades of wrestling with these unearthly encounters, you'd probably think his big conclusion is all about aliens and spaceships. But the place his journey took him is, it's a lot closer to home. And honestly, he thinks it's a lot more shocking. He puts it really simply. After everything he's seen, everything he's thought about, he says if a fleet of spaceships landed on the White House lawn tomorrow, he wouldn't even be surprised. Not one bit. For him, that's already a given. Okay, so if alien ships landing on Earth wouldn't shock him, what on Earth would? And there it is. That's the twist. The most surprising, the most shocking thing he could possibly imagine isn't some creature from another planet. It's a human being from this planet who has managed to stay truly alive and authentic. Someone whose mind hasn't been completely shaped, conditioned, and, as he puts it, invaded by dead culture. After seeing the unknown, the rarest thing in the universe to him became a truly free human mind.
And that just leaves us with this really incredible thought to chew on. Turan's whole philosophy bloomed from seeing a strange light in the sky. It really makes you wonder, what are the weird, unexplained moments in our own lives, the things that don't quite fit, and what would happen if we actually stopped and thought seriously about them? Where might they lead us?